All right, Mayor, I've got 4:15.
Yeah, let's get started, yeah. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Water sewer meeting? Okay.
Thank you.
Adrian.
Mayor, we have 5 items on the agenda for the Water and Sewer Committee.
Okay.
The first item is a follow-up from your previous meeting on the River Ridge Condominium Pump Station
Right. Hey, Doug.
project.
How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm glad you made it, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So, and I was not at the previous meeting, but my understanding was you wanted the city attorney to look into the ownership status of the pump station
Yes.
down at River Ridge, because there was evidence that had been deeded over to the city. We looked that up, and going back through some city council minutes, the neighborhood did deed the parcel where the pump station is located to the city, but the city has never accepted that pump station for ownership or maintenance, and we've never done any kind of regular maintenance on that pump station. And so we would, and I've included some minutes from, I believe it's the March 5th, 1990 City Council meeting and May 7th, 1990 Council meeting.
Is that this 160A-381?
No, sir.
Different one, okay.
A different one. So I don't know that anything has changed. We would take it over now where we would not have back in the 1990s.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you want, Chuck, do you have anything else to add on that? Or the request from the residents?
My understanding of the recommendation is not to accept, but also to provide them assistance if there's an overflow. Is that what the...
Right. You know, if you're familiar with the location of the pump station relative to that cove, it's short distance here, and if anything were to happen, if they were to have a big overflow, we certainly don't want any wastewater getting into that cove. So if we were notified that there was an emergency, we would certainly respond. But this is a private pump station, so we would respond as we can, and then bill them for our time and materials. We certainly wouldn't want water quality issues in that cove.
So your recommendation is not to accept it, but provide emergency assistance if needed?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But certainly would like to hear from the residents if
Chris was.
anybody wants to speak.
He was going to mention something too.
I don't understand how the city owns it and it's not responsible for it. And I work for a town, I've had some of our people help out, and our attorney found the original plat. This is 1985. The town bought it in 1990, $10. And it shows the original plat where the pump station is.
Yes, sir.
And then on the deed where you bought it. And also, I think there's a regulation from DOT if it goes into a manhole in the city that it can't be a privately owned. It has to be publicly owned. Have that.
DOT road where that pumps in there.
Now, my understanding is that from all of our records, we don't own it. Yes, the neighborhood deeded the property over to us, but we don't own nor have we maintained.
I know you haven't maintained it, but is that something that fell through the cracks that we maintained something for the city for 29 years?
Based on our research where this was an issue in 1990, and the city council in 1990 reaffirmed that we don't own it and that we don't maintain it, then I would say it did not fall through the cracks. It's never been ours.
What's the deal?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I don't understand.
Yeah, because we can't find a deed, can we?
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah,
a deed
there's a deed.
What's Parks' interpretation?
that it's not ours. It's
That
private.
even though we were deeded to land, the actual station is not ours?
Correct.
There's actually there's actually a clause in the original deed that the city did not want to maintain or keep that property, that would automatically go back over to the HOA. And why that has never happened after 1990, I don't know.
Well, that's not exactly what.
That's what it says in there. Yes, sir.
It says that the pump station was abandoned and it would revert back to River Ridge.
I can bring my copy because I had it last time. Okay.
Well, if that's the case, then I would recommend that we just deed it back. In the event the city of Belmont shall discontinue use of the above site as a pump station, title of the site shall revert to River Ridge Condominium Association.
Right.
No, so the city attorney's looked into it, and his opinion is that we do not own it.
So the city's attorney's advice legally is that that is not ours and we should not maintain it.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, then I think, we need to go by his advice.
We want to make a
I'd
motion,
make a
Ron?
motion that we not accept the pump station as ours.
Go here a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Yeah, if it's not down there, then,
Thank you.
That's what I'm saying. I was trying to show the ownership of the city.
what's the next item on the agenda, Adrian?
The next item on the agenda is a contract agreement with HDR for architectural, engineering, and construction oversight services at the water treatment plant for the laboratory operations rehab project. And I'll ask Chuck Flowers to present this. This is in you've got the contract with HDR in your agenda packet.
You might need to see a copy of the contract.
I don't have a contract. Not that I know, it's not in here. I know, okay.
As you may or may not know, we put out request for qualifications for architectural and engineering services for the lab and break room project at the water plant. That project has been on our CIP since the CIP's inception, but it has also been on our annual inspection from the public water supply system. They got so many monitors now up there, DEQ, we can't keep up with. But public water supply station's been on since 1993. We sent out those requests. We received two. Actually, we received one, then we put it out again for another period. We received the second one. And we had a committee that several of us were on, myself, Joe Roy, I think Elizabeth was on that, and Shelley, just to take it, so I could have some other eyes on it and look at it. And from the committee, the vote on the committee was that we go with HDR. We brought that to you a couple of council meetings ago, and you authorized us to go into negotiations with them. We went into negotiations with HDR on it, and the contract that you have in your package is the contract they came back with. We have, before we brought this to the committee today, we've given the contract to Parks. I'm not sure if Parks has given us an opinion on that contract yet or not, but he's had that contract to look at. Staff's recommendation that we go, that we accept HDR's bid of $378,800 for the architectural and engineering portion of the architectural engineering portion and the oversight of the construction phase of that project. Take that portion out of that CIP, and then once we get bids in, we'll look at updating that CIP, the final amount on that CIP. Or we'll start a new project for it, whichever is y'all's desire.
All right, so basically what are you asking us to do, Chuck, on this thing?
If you
Approve.
approve it, to take it to council for a full vote, yes, sir.
For the contract with
HDR.
Okay. And that contract for both the design and the construction administration is $378,800,
Okay.
which
We
is,
got budgeted for that too.
which is slightly more than a third of our overall project budget estimate that we had
Yeah.
for this. Now, I don't know how old our numbers are, so they're probably pretty old and haven't been
Yeah.
indexed for inflation and certainly construction inflation now, because everything's coming in high.
The caveat to all this is we have a 97-year-old building down there.
Yeah.
And we'll have, all the unknowns on that they not factored in here. This is a not to exceed cost if you're looking at the contract really good.
Okay.
It's not to exceed that. But we have, I can promise you, some of the brick was made over off Old Dow Road at the old brickyard.
Really?
And it won't be as plumb as things are today.
Yeah.
And you're looking at commercial and industrial prices have been somewhere around $200 to $275 a square foot on construction now. So that's going to jack that price way up.
But you think the existing building will hold up okay?
Oh yeah, it'll hold up.
All right.
It's structurally sound. It's just
Yeah.
for us to fit inside what we have planned to fit inside that, which is adequate break space, separating the operations in the laboratory,
Yeah.
and giving us we only have one bathroom in the whole place.
Yeah.
So we need the extra restroom.
Okay. And this is
we also need a couple small offices. That's what
Okay.
the project entails.
All right.
And the biggest portion of it's going to be the ADA compliance.
Okay.
And these are needs that we've identified for 25 years.
Yeah.
And we keep
Yeah.
telling the state that we're
I think
going to
it's
get to them,
time
and we put them on the
to move on
list,
with
and the
it.
state's finally saying, all right.
What do you think,
need
Ron?
to do
So I make a motion that we present this HDR contract for design and construction to the council.
Yeah. You got a second, Ron?
No, the construction part is just overseeing the
Construction
construction.
administration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I will second that.
Good, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thanks, Chuck, for all your work on that.
Don't go too far, Tom.
I'm not going to
All right, the next item on the agenda is bid proposals for constructing a satellite water and sewer equipment and supplies facility on city-owned property on Henry Chapel Road.
I thought they talked about putting it on Duke Power property.
That's the tank.
That's the elevated water
Yeah.
tank.
Elevated water tank.
Oh, so,
This is the old
This is
site.
the old site
We're gonna
for
put a water tank on.
so I need to pay attention.
No, you're
Jason,
very astute.
Yeah. Yeah, when they said Henry Chapel, I just thought of that.
At one point, we were going to put the elevated water tank on the Henry Chapel Road property.
Yeah, that just kicked something in my head. I'm sorry.
But it's going to be on the Duke property now, though.
The water tank will be on the
tank,
Duke,
yes.
the plant out. So we have a new use for this that we've identified for
We own the
several
property on
years.
Hughes Chapel.
This is the building.
It's 1.3 acres, yes, sir.
I understand.
It's a flag lot down there, and when I say flag lot, if you look at it on an aerial map, it looks just like a flag.
Yeah.
I've only brought with me the low bidders proposal. It should be in your, both proposals from Momentum and Bowercraft should be in your package. If anybody need a copy of this low bid.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Forgot to bring
Me
my
too.
computer in. I'll go get it for the workshop.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, then one I'm gonna give you one, Ron.
Okay.
Just a little bit of background real quick. We solicited bids, we went to engineering firms because both of these contractors will have to submit engineer plans to us. We went to Shield Engineering, you look at a turnkey job.
Yeah.
They never came back to us. They contacted us 3 times. They never came back to us with a firm price. HDR says something that's out of their realm. And the third company, they just never responded. So out of frustration, I went to local construction companies to get bids, knowing that they would have to submit engineer drawings.
Yeah.
Not only to us, but also to get their permits for this. And also talked to Jerry. We know that there's a plan eventually down the road to get water and possibly sewer down Henry's Chapel to get to the Henry's Chapel property.
Right.
What we may end up doing is let Jerry's offered, let Jerry engineer the water line itself down there too, and terminate it at this property, because we do have a stub out off of at the intersection of Henry's Chapel and South Point Road, and lay a 12-inch line down through there. So that's what we perceive that that line would be.
4-inch line?
12.
12-inch line.
And then that way we can tap in and be able to get water to this site for a restroom. Until sewer's available, we can, and I checked it out with planning and zoning to make sure it was okay and make sure it would meet, they would approve it and would meet standards. We'll put either a septic system, a septic field in here.
Yeah.
And if we can't get it to perk, what we'll do is put in a temporary septic system, and we'll just use our pump truck to pump out as needed.
So what's the building size going to be?
40 by 40, 40 by 30, excuse me, I'm sorry.
40 by 30, so 12.
40 by 40 on
It is 40 by 40, I'm sorry.
40 by 40.
I changed it, I'm
So
sorry.
1,600 square feet
1,600 square feet, yeah.
for $400,000.
Yeah.
That's like a 4-bedroom, 2.5, 3.5 bath home. Why is it so expensive?
It's the grading. The grading is what's going to cost us.
And why do we need this?
Well, right now, if we leave out of here at 8 o'clock in the morning, it takes us about 45 minutes to get down to South Shore. The furthest point with any kind of equipment, any kind of material, to respond to any type of water or sewer emergency in that area. And that's what we were planning on putting. It's basically putting an annex down there where we could have a lay-down yard for
Yeah.
materials,
Yeah.
and keep a piece of equipment and a truck to pull that piece of equipment with to be able to service that load in the road.
Does the property that we own on, what's that road?
Gaither Road.
Gaither Road, any better for,
The topo on Gaither Road is much worse. If you'll put,
I mean, just off the road do we own just off the road that isn't so bad? I mean, that just seems rather steep to me.
understand?
Yeah. This is the precautionary measure.
Well, this
So
is
if we build this right there, with all the homes we've got coming down Henry Chapel Road, it would be very difficult to respond to
Well,
emergency with
it's already very difficult to respond to anything on the peninsula.
Yeah.
Now, I will not tell you that it takes that long after 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Between 9:30 and 2 o'clock, 2:30.
Yeah.
It's about 25 minutes.
Yeah.
To get out.
Which is still a lot of time.
But we left out with a dump truck, pulling a piece of equipment out at 8:05 one morning, and it took us 45 minutes to get to the entrance of South Shore.
Wow.
You know, and I can't get there as quick in a dump truck pulling something as I could my pickup truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, we identified this on the CIP several years ago as we were growing on the southern end of town, as a way to not have to mobilize at the plants and bring everything down, and trailer the big equipment and take it on down to do the work, in Reflection Point or McLean or Morgan's Branch, or I guess Lake Point. So this was a good kind of halfway.
Is Rudy still in business? That building there?
He passed away.
What's that?
Rudy died.
I don't know if they- I don't know
Don't
if
his
they're
son have
running
it
that. I
now?
don't know if they're still running that.
I mean,
I don't think it's open.
That's that beer joint.
yeah. I mean, that's a sizable building, and
I don't know that we could buy it for $394,000. And if you look, the other proposal from Momentum was $757,000. It was $349 for the building, and $349,000 for the building and
Yeah,
$358 for site work.
I know we have this piece of land, but just because we have this piece of land doesn't mean that's where we have to put it.
No,
I mean,
and I agree with you.
if it's gonna be so
But we-
dang expensive to build on it.
Rudy's we would have to be able to put a piece of equipment in there, you'd have to have at least 20-foot ceilings. Backhoe, when it's folded up, takes up 12.5-foot height.
So basically what you're saying, Chuck, is the most cost-effective way to do this right here for responding down there?
It's a land we owned,
Yeah.
that we didn't need to go out and try to buy.
Yeah.
And I think the manager's right. I think that anything we try to buy along frontage of South Point Road, or
Yeah.
anything off of South Point Road down there, is gonna be much more expensive
Yeah.
than what I present to you today. I'm not saying that it will be, but I said potential there that it would be.
What kind of building is it gonna be, Adrian?
There's,
Metal building, right?
No, we can't put a mill.
Can't put a metal
you
building
know, it's gotta
in.
be nicer than
It's
just a
gotta
metal
be nice,
building.
yes, sir.
That's right.
Block.
It's gotta be block, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's gotta be block or hardy plank, or,
Yeah.
we wouldn't try to circumvent our own.
It won't be anything extravagant, but it will be as nice of a
Decor.
storage building as we
Absolutely.
can.
Yeah, it says hardy plank and,
Yeah.
but the inside plywood
Yes.
walls and things like that, so it's.
Because across the street's gonna eventually be a residential development in the city limits, and we wanna make sure that those future residents don't call and complain about this facility.
That's a tall garage door too, 20 feet.
That's right.
That's a big one.
But it takes that.
Wow. Okay.
Now, it would be cheaper to build a house on that property.
I understand that.
But you're not gonna fill, well, with a 20-foot garage though either, so
Still
yeah.
have to grade it.
In the long run, it makes sense to me if we can have our equipment down there.
You could always recommend not to accept these, and I understand.
I understand
We
too,
could put
but
this off and,
we put it off a long time. We've been dilly-dallying with it, how many years, Adrian?
how long
At
has this
least-
been on there?
But it's been on there at least 5 years.
What was the estimate on the the
381,000, I think, if my memory serves me correct.
Mine's, I looked it up earlier, 191,000. But that was probably an original figure.
It was.
Is there any more phases of McLean that's gonna go in? Could we negotiate to get 1,600, a place to put a 1,600 square foot building that?
I'm not sure.
'Cause if that's where we wanna be, if that's where we need to go,
Well, anywhere,
why shouldn't we be down
We
there?
just need to get anywhere, be able to get anywhere on the peninsula fairly quick to be able to respond.
But that would be, to me, Henry's Chapel would be a very
And usually,
important place to put that with the
Doug,
number of
just so
homes
you
that are coming
understand
in there.
why I recommend it, usually we like to keep our equipment, our materials, and stuff related to water and sewer out of sight, out of mind, so it doesn't become an eyesore for the other community. And I doubt McLean will let give us any more, especially a lay down yard.
Yeah.
Where we're laying down, and I may have to go temporarily dump.
Well, isn't Henry Chapel gonna be developed, or they
On
wanna
the other
develop
On
it?
the other side, that's why this has, it's down and it's gonna be screened.
We keep that, but we should be able to keep that buffer.
It's on the right-hand side of
Going down.
Yes, sir.
Road?
It's a couple hundred feet back from the woods.
Yeah, it'd be hard to see
Yeah.
We have
this.
like a 20-foot strip that goes
Yeah.
back.
Okay.
The roadway would be, the property, I think, the whole property, the whole entrance to the property is like 43 feet wide.
Okay.
Is it near
So-
Sticky
so-
Moore's house?
So then the next thing is,
Near James.
it takes,
Both Jameses.
it takes us 45 minutes to get down there today. Once they build out that subdivision in Henry's Chapel, is it gonna take us 45 minutes still to get down there? Because of the traffic congestion in the morning
I
coming
understand
out
the
of that
question.
subdivision?
That cemetery is further down, isn't it? Okay.
This was, it's in between James Dawkins' house
Yeah.
and James Hanks' house.
Okay, okay.
It would if we had to leave there at 7:45 in the morning.
So we're talking about
Unless,
39,400.
unless we man it. If we man it, it wouldn't, they could leave out of there, they could leave out of there whenever they get the call.
But he'd have to pull somebody from another
Well,
position.
we
to put
got,
him
we
there.
have 3 crews of 3 on the distribution crew.
Yeah,
So there's also the gentleman that bought property right by the Duke Power entrance, and there's 4 lots down there. What's he selling those lots for?
I don't know.
Because
but
they're
he's-
flat.
Yeah, he's got, but he's doing that for residential construction.
Yeah, but if we could we buy one and rezone it to
His
be
daughter-
for our need?
His daughter lives.
Yeah, and, yeah, she lives in one house, and then there's another house that's been built, but I think there's still 2 lots available.
Talking about Ray's, Kenny's property, okay.
Yeah, I don't know what they're selling.
yeah, Ray McKinney's property, that's right. Yeah, that's Ray's.
I don't know. For some reason, this just seems like we're sinking money in something that isn't gonna really get us what we think we need.
I mean, if we want to wait and when the economy slows down and prices come down, we may save $50,000, $75,000 on it. But.
We're gonna finance it.
I don't know, I may be way off base, but if a stick building, a 1,600 square foot stick building would be about $160,000, and we're paying $400 for it. So that just seems like it's pretty darn high.
And it took Chuck a long time to get 2 contractors to even
Bid on it,
bid on it
because of the topography,
because of the market.
Because of the market.
because of the market.
They don't have time to waste on something
On
that's small.
something that's
Yeah.
small.
But fiber cement exterior and concrete apron on 2 sides. of the
Ron, what do
building.
you think?
I don't know, the elevations in here, what it's gonna look like?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
On
These
page,
elevations, so don't show hardy board or anything.
it's on page 84
Yeah.
in your packet. The floor plan's on page 83.
I mean, I don't know, Doug, I mean, I understand what you're
Well,
saying.
I didn't put the elevations in that. I just didn't want
I mean, we,
to print off 100 pages.
it's stick-built, exterior to be fiber cement siding, painted with a 20-foot tall garage door, concrete apron on 2
So it's
sides.
talking about fiber, so these elevations aren't true elevations. So tell me this, why should we build it and how come it's costing so much? I think that's the question Doug is asking.
Yeah, if you're telling me it's just here because of the topography and because they don't want to mess with it, so they put a big enough margin on it that it's worth their while.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying it's because of the topography. We would have to, we'd have to get in there too. I don't know how to explain it. We've got a long, narrow, skinny, 0.3 acres is a long, narrow, skinny portion of this property.
Yeah.
To get back to the
Yeah.
main 1 acre property.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to build a road to get in there.
Yeah,
And then you have to clear off that portion of it.
yeah,
We would put, this also includes a fence, security fence. It also includes running a water line
Yeah.
all the way down back to the road
Right.
on our property. It's basically a turnkey job.
right.
Yeah.
Right now, all we have is woods out there.
And my question to you is this.
Mhm.
Is this the ideal location for it, or is it the most convenient because we already own the land?
It's the most convenient because we already own the land.
Okay.
I would not tell you
Yeah.
that it's the most ideal for it, sir.
Where is the most ideal location for this?
Somewhere on the other side of the canal. Any piece of property on the other side of the canal would be the most practical for it. There's no way out, there's no way I could spin it any other way.
Yeah.
But that's hard to find that land, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Because then the old Archie's land, then that being sold for residential too?
Yes, sir.
I know he had a bunch of land right in there.
That'd be the land right there around Ruby's. that he's
Yeah.
talking about. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And every small piece every small piece down there is, I will say this, we're great negotiators because, and I reckon Duke owes us a little bit because we could get an acre and a half for $5,000 on South Point Road out there, I apologize.
What about the land that Ray Hardy had for his church that he was gonna build down there?
Ray McKinney's got
Ray
that.
McKinney had-
Ray McKinney owns it, he's building houses there.
Because the
I
original
thought they were gonna
building,
have a church built down there at one time.
At one time they
Switched,
were.
was, but-
They switched.
They switched, okay.
Yes, sir.
I got you.
the original concept was to build the building beside the water tower, wasn't it? No? No?
We knew that the most we found, once we understood that the most optimal place for that water tower was not going to be there, and it was gonna be on the other side of the canal somewhere.
Yeah.
And we stopped pursuing that site after we had already bought it for a water tower. We own it, and right now, as Doug said, it's the most convenient place we have, out of sight, out of mind, out of way, that we can respond pretty quickly to anything past the high school.
Yeah.
So Adrian, what's your recommendation?
Our recommendation is to proceed with the project. I mean, I know it's expensive, but I don't know that we're going to be able to buy property south of the canal, do site work, and stick build a building for
Well, and you're looking at all the bells and
unless we
whistles on
want
it,
to wait
too.
until the recession.
You got your electric fence, power, stuff like
So
that.
actually,
Can,
Yeah.
is there any way we can dictate as people want to develop down there that you have to give us X number of piece of land to put something on that we need put on?
I don't think so.
I don't think you could do it quite like that, but
No, it'd be,
it's one thing to have, like the pump station building we talked about last, that's going to be necessary for the project. I don't know that a neighborhood is going to want to have this in their neighborhood.
So going back again, what's wrong with the Gaither property, because you'd be turning right out of that neighborhood versus having to try to cut across traffic that's coming
Yes,
up?
sir. That is a huge topo problem down there, and it's full of rock. We would spend probably 3 times that
Okay.
amount on grading.
Okay.
Any portion of that here.
All
I did
right.
look at that.
I surrender.
No, I did look at that. That's what makes it so convenient.
I'm sure you examined all the options on this.
Yes, sir.
This is probably the most cost-effective way for us to do this
I
right
think
there.
what Doug is saying, for that number of square feet, it seems extremely high, but from what you're saying is site development is a big significant part of that.
Well, just so you understand, when I received this back in August, I got sticker shock. So when I could not.
It took him a while to tell me.
When I couldn't get anybody else
Right.
to bid, I started looking for bidders. Well, this didn't seem so much like sticker shock when we got the most recent
Yeah.
bid in.
All right, do we know a builder that's struggling? That needs
At
jobs?
this point,
That,
not a reputable builder, sir.
No,
All
you
right,
can't
so-
build houses in this market. I don't want to build.
Yeah.
just a
Since
stick.
Doug is struggling, I'll recommend that we accept it, then,
Yeah, that's
And we
good.
work
Go
with
ahead,
our
go ahead.
I make the recommendation, we accept them, and make this recommendation to the full board to proceed.
I second it.
I'll approve it too, so. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, motion carried. Thanks, Chuck.
It's good discussion. It is expensive.
Yeah,
I wish
It
it
is,
weren't.
but-
All right.
And I appreciate the input. I mean,
Can,
and it's-
can you put like red lights on your vehicles as you pull out so everybody has to stop and then you...
We got DOTs, we'll turn those on and run that for, I'll try that anyway.
All right, the next item on the agenda is consideration of an annual post-services agreement with MeterSys for support of our AMI infrastructure and software. I'll turn it back over to
And
Chuck
our portal.
and Portal.
Does anybody need?
Yeah,
This is on page 89 in your packet.
I'll just hand it down.
thanks.
I'm sure y'all aware that our AMI system is up and running and it's very helpful for us. And then our portal, we had a conversation on that this morning. We have right at 2,000 folks out of our 6,500 total meters that are out there, still boys out there that have signed up for the portal. We're going to do a push to try to increase that a little bit more.
Yeah, we probably need to.
But with all the things that are going on, me and Michelle sat down and talked about and asked about the need for someone to assist us going forward as the developments for the software and the AMI system and the developments on the portal side, and also the developments for we're going to get a new billing system. It's going to be starting in a few months, Edmonds, to integrate all that into our portal and integrate all that into our AMI software, because we really, behind the scenes, we really struggled with ICS to get everything that we had integrated in from our MyNext system into to get it up and running and get it functional. And I didn't do as much pulling out of my hair as Michelle and Elizabeth did with that very smart fellow from ICS, but he's one of those that's never wrong. Even if he's wrong, he won't admit he's wrong. But needless to say, we feel there's a need for an annual basis, and if we see something after the first year that we don't need this annual agreement anymore with them, we can cut that off.
So this was not part of the original plan?
No, sir, it was not.
So this is in addition to what we
Yes.
thought we would need?
And MeterSys has since our contract, our contract with UtiliWorks and MeterSys, we had a little bit left over from that original budget, and we had like $18,000, so we contracted with them for this portal issue. They got the portal up and running, and once the portal was up and running, MeterSys has really basically out of the kindness of their heart has been answering all of our questions and responding to us and still giving us some help. But I do know that's costing them staff time, costing them money. And just to give you an example, we had a lightning strike back in October on our tank at North Belmont. The hub and the antenna both were destroyed. My tank maintenance folks aren't versed in communications. They oversee communications, they don't maintain the communications. So we called Andy and just under the wire so we could get in, wouldn't have to go out and do a manual read. And he also offered some software that we could borrow, do a drive-by read. We had 600. We had 600 of those meters that couldn't be rerouted anywhere. So we got a slimer, got a thing, and got us up and running just in the time before we get all those meters. That kind of support service after the fact, I think we need, and that's what we're recommending.
How many meters are there, Chuck?
6,517 as of Friday. I'm sorry I did not look this morning. I apologize.
That's fine.
Chuck, tell me something.
Yes, sir.
When we purchase this, we purchase software to support it. How is this different from what are we doing away with some of the original software we bought?
As they upgrade the software, sometimes they're very slow at pushing it out to us to let us understand. There's a couple pieces in there. There's a module in there now that we've negotiated through MeterSys to get free, that will be on our screen every day. We got it to help Jerry out with this peninsula study and eventually every other study, but we asked for it to be total gallons coming in to each lift station from each area. Jerry needs individual, and they can build that module, but it may be at a cost. But with the people that know the inside of all this and do a lot of work with Mueller, they may can get that module for us for free too. We have a module on there that's free. They're just starting to populate it now.
So we still have the original software that we purchased?
Yes, sir.
And that software, is it doing okay?
Yes, sir.
And this is an enhancement to do
From my
what?
side, it's doing okay. Michelle, from your side?
It's the reports that Jerry's needing, that we're having to pull, is a lot of manual work and pulling in Excel. I know he has to then do a lot of adjusting. Even when I send it to him after I pulled it out of ICS, this update that MeterSys is going to be able to put in place for us will be an automatic push the button. It'll be a lot easier. Jerry Hatton can go in there at any time and push it. It'll save a lot of time and on our side, my side and Jerry's side.
And my staff side, because we can take a look at the different areas. Instead of doing it by route, we're going to do it by general area of the lift station. And we can go in there and we can see, when we have a rain event, we can see where it's, just because it rained an inch over at Stowe didn't mean it didn't rain 8 inches over here in
Yeah.
Rankin.
Yeah.
And we can start seeing that kind of stuff.
So all in all-
What the inflow is.
All in all, we've benefited by the meters system. All right.
So is this because we need this because we don't have in-house the expertise that we need to be able to best utilize this system? So we look to an outside source to help us with this?
Yes, sir.
And
is 30 hours, 30 hours a month seems like pretty reasonable amount, right?
It is.
And it's cheaper than if we hired somebody full-time to do it.
this also includes training updates.
Yeah.
Any kind of training update that we may need, anything that comes out that's new. And if we got new staff to train, help train.
So was this just an oversight of what we thought we would need long-term in terms of support of this system, that now we need continual consulting support? Did we think it was going to be easier to use? And
Answer your question, yes, sir, and no, sir. And let me explain that. Our original intent was to do an AMR system, which is not as in-depth as this AMI system. But with the technology that's out there and using that technology, how this can be integrated into other things, we can add packages for leak detection, we can add packages for pressure. They're actually coming out with a meter now that will tell me the pressure in that meter. It's not been perfected yet, but this you can grow on. AMR, you're limited.
yeah.
I just conducted a meeting on Friday. I hosted the city of Greensboro, and that's what they have. It's an AMR system. They're going to the AMI.
So do we foresee that we will need this type of service going forward?
In the short term, yes, sir.
3-5
In the
years?
short term, yes, sir. I think.
Do we need to, instead of negotiating 1 year at a time, go ahead and negotiate a 5-year deal that locks us in so that next year it's not, 37,000, and the next year it's 43,000, and the next year it's 50,000, and the next year it's 55,000? If this is going to be a long-term need,
You want to lock it in?
I would suggest we negotiate then either a renewal structure that limits how much it can grow, but I would do something that would protect us from
Didn't gather.
next year it being 37, because they know they've got us.
And I would even suggest that, we certainly do this for the year one or for next year, or I guess starting in April, if approved. But then, for the cost of this and what we're getting, it would be nice to have somebody in-house that could do this. And so, have kind of a transition plan to where we rely fully on MeterSys, maybe in year one. Year two, we hire some sort of data analyst that would know how to do all this stuff, and MeterSys trains that person on our system. And then we've got them for more than this, but we're also getting them 40 hours a week,
Right,
not 30
exactly.
hours a month.
Yeah.
So you're talking about doing away with AMR in the long term?
We don't have AMR, sir. We have AMI.
And there's a lot more functionality that
Yes.
we just frankly aren't taking advantage of because we just
Yeah,
don't have time.
right, yeah.
So we'll be able to take
It's a more
advantage of it
robust
with
tool
this,
than what
right.
we have the capability right now to look at.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So
And it would be nice to look at, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so 32,000 says to me, it may not be worth a resource, but if it is worth a resource, that's gonna cost us more than that, but save us in the long term. I'm not opposed to adding a resource that in the long run would be less expensive than continually do an outsource of this service.
I was thinking along the same line, but I want to get this.
I think Greensboro
Brought that back.
probably plays a lot more for their something.
So the question is it, can you find this type of person that knows this system, or is this something we're gonna have to train and,
Probably have to train.
yeah?
And if we want a data analyst just to do this, yes, sir. If you're gonna share him with someone else, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the question is, do you think this would be a full-time position, or do you think this would be,
In my opinion.
you think it would be a full-time position?
I think the more you get into it, the more you'll find that,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
There's so much you can expand upon on that system. Like I said, with leak detection and pressure zones and other things that are out there.
Yeah.
And the reason we haven't pushed leak detection, we're looking at a thing through the Top Water Management Group partnership. There may be some grants out there coming from them that will allow us to expand on that and add those leak detection systems at maybe not such a big price tag on those.
So who would they send to us for this?
It'll be everyone, the resources listed there. Your main resource is going to be Lauren Brown, the second one on there.
Okay.
She's been our main point of contact.
Right. Is there a junior person on that team that may be interested in changing roles?
We tried to take a couple of them from them.
I've
Because,
been
I mean,
trying to
that's what I
hire
would
Lauren
do.
for 30 years.
We've been trying to do that. And they just, I'm not
Can't
sure
afford
what.
Do they have a non-compete or something that
I'm not
prevents
sure
them
what Mr.
from?
Honeycutt's paying them, but I think he's paying them very well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, I mean, I'll say this, I mean, if we need to do this for next year to buy us time to develop a plan of how we develop somebody in-house, I'm okay with that. But I'm also not opposed that if we found the right person to just go ahead and pull the plug and do it.
That was going to be the next step. I just wanted to see how this worked out for a year or two and then present that.
Ron, what do you think?
I agree with that. I think we should go ahead and move forward at this, make the recommendation to council for this year.
Yep, I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, let's move on. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you. And the last thing on our water and sewer committee agenda is a recommended update to our land development standards manual. I'll turn it over to Jerry Hatton.
Thank you. This is primarily about utility trench compaction testing. In past years, developers have voluntarily hired soil scientists to check compaction as pipelines are being put into the ground. We've had a lot higher experienced contractors in town until recently, and recently we've discovered that they're dealing with the same personnel issues that everybody else is, trying to find the right people. So the recommendation is that we require developers to hire a geotech to go out there. Standards for the compaction would be included in Appendix C of our land development standards manual, and it's the same specifications that we put into our water and sewer construction plans now, so it's nothing unusual. Originally, I think I got those specifications from Charlotte Valley, so reason. So what the provisions, primary provisions of Appendix C is that they have to hire soils firms to check the compaction at the rates that are specified there, and then this compaction requirement specifically addresses the areas under pavements and within right-of-ways. We don't care too much if they're going across the field, what's happening out there. So it's my recommendation that you approve this, and then we can, I guess, have to go to council.
Yeah, to approve the land development standards manual.
I just want to know what a muffin monster is.
Well, we'll get down to it, okay? And there's a reason it's called that. In addition to that, there were certain chapters where we had to do modifications to indicate that this was a requirement of that, so I've listed that for you. And then also in chapters 8 and 9, I had to provide notification of impact fees since we're no longer charging that. We'll get that straightened out. Finally, there was one additional change we wanted to make, and this is our pump station standards to require the use of a mechanically clean screen. Right now, we have manual screens out there, which are essentially just bar screens, and we have to send somebody out there daily or whatever to rate these things. That's to keep the high-density solids, the bigger pieces of stuff that people flush down their toilets for getting into our pumps and clogging up our pumps. The Muffin Monster is a mechanical screening device that just chops the heck out of everything that comes to it. We require that at our regional pump stations. The two big pump stations have that. We've also gotten them at our McLean development pump stations, which we call sub-regional, so we require that there. But clearly, it reduces the amount of labor that we have to do, but it does take care of some of the newer adult paper products that get flushed down toilets. And that's why they call it a Muffin Monster. We see things all over the place at the pump station up in North Belmont, the Duncan pump station, that apparently is full of earplugs because some worker at one of the factories or several flush the earplugs when they throw them away down the toilet instead of putting them in the trash. We see a lot of odd things, and it's becoming a problem for us. This solves the problem. This grinder is a very heavy-duty piece of equipment. It's not that it won't require maintenance or replacement, but it does reduce the effort that we have to have our staff right now that go out there. Cleaning the screens is not the most fun thing.
So the ask today is for us to recommend that we present this as it is to council?
Yes, sir.
I make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay.
And that is all that we have for the Water and Sewer Committee.
All right. Make a motion to adjourn the water and sewer
Make a
meeting.
motion, we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Okay.
Chuck's spending more money than the police.
All right, now we will switch out the recording of the Water and Sewer Committee and then go into our special city council meeting.
Hey, Martha.
Get in, Mark.
Okay. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Hey, John. How's it going? Good to see you, man. That project coming good.
Yeah, I just delivered the plan.
Yeah, that's why we,
Good.
that's why we being too loud, because we were talking about that.
John, are you? Yes, sir.
I'll drink it.
Just leave it there.
Got any new exotic vacations?
It's got left.
Well, if I drink two, I'll have to take a break.
That, I got it.
Although I had zero water in my body.
It's an unusual place. It's not what you think it is.
It's
Mayor, you ready to call us to order?
Yeah.
an amazing place.
We're gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. All right. We're a little bit behind here because we got tied up with the water sewer right there. Before we get started, I think it's important, very important to mention, for the sake of our council, to be able to go ahead and keep things under your hat when you have them out there. If you get on Facebook and you get on things out there, people get misinformation and stuff like that, and that's going to penalize everybody right there. We need to be wise and smart when it comes to getting out there and making decisions as far as what's going on and this stuff and that stuff. You may have a difference of opinion, but all of us work together on the council. We all need to be on the same page. And it's very, very important when you have somebody that goes against the grain and gets on Facebook and people read different things into it that are not the truth, then it creates a problem for everybody. So we need to really watch what we're doing on that thing, okay, guys? All right, everybody understand that?
Yep, understood.
All right. Now, let's proceed.
Thank you, and just as a reminder, we are live streaming our meeting, so we don't have the microphones on loud in the building, but we are still recording. The first three items on your agenda are for action, and then the final the next three items are for discussion and just updates on some activities. The first item on the agenda is an approval of declaration of surplus police vehicles. And I'm sorry we did not get this on the agenda for last week's council meeting, but the police department has three police vehicles that they would like to be declared surplus, a 2006, 2007, and 2008 Ford Crown Victoria. And you'll see on page 4 that they each have over 100,000 miles on it. So the police department would like to surplus those. So if you have
Do we have a motion to go ahead and...
I'll make a motion.
Got a motion?
I'll second it.
Got a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Motion carries then.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval or consider approval of an ordinance authorizing the sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages for the Montcross Area Chamber of Commerce pre-Cinco de Mayo networking event at Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park. As I understand it, they're not going to be selling alcohol, but they will have beer and wine at their networking event, which they typically have at their chamber events. This would be at the Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park on Thursday, May the 2nd from 5 to 7:30 p.m. So they're requesting approval to have alcohol in the park.
I'll make a motion, we approve that alcohol.
Hey, real quick, don't we rope off like an area or something?
Is Cassidy?
Yes, to my knowledge, it's not standard practice.
Well, I mean, I'm cool with it, I assure you, but I know sometimes they try to keep the alcohol outside of the actual playground area.
I think they're renting picnic
Is
shelters.
it like in a shelter or something? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, that's
sure
fine.
they know better, but
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
it.
Yeah, 2 seconds. Okay.
Let's do this first.
We'll give that one to Ron. Okay.
That's fine.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries then. Cinco de Mayo.
Thank you. The third item is similar, and it is a request, approval of an ordinance to authorize the sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages at Stowe Park for the 2019 Garibaldi Festival, which will be Saturday, April the 27th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. This would be for sale, possession, and consumption of, I guess, beer in this case, in Stowe Park and Main Street associated with that festival. And this is the first time we've had a request at one of our city festivals, so Cassidy can explain where this request came from.
Just an effort to sort of add an additional element to our festival, to provide something maybe the adults can enjoy, since it's something that's typically pretty geared towards the younger generations, and just make it more of a similar layout to our Friday Night Live events, just broaden the scope of the event in general.
So the idea would be to have a vendor handle all of this. We actually had a request, I believe, at the 4th of July event last year, where we had beer and wine sales in the evening, and as they were setting up during the middle of the afternoon, a lot of parents came over and asked if they could buy a beer, but it was before we were authorized to sell.
So this from 11 o'clock to what time?
4 p.m.
4 p.m.
And I'll be glad to make a motion, we approve that. I think as long as we still see that family atmosphere and it doesn't cause a problem, for the history of that, for some of us, we used to have the beer and wine garden roped off for our Friday Night Live events, and it was one of the nicest things that Charlie Flowers ever did, because I explained to him, if my husband wanted to get a beer, then he had to stay in the beer garden and couldn't sit with me. And so I said, if we're really trying to have that family atmosphere, as long as people can behave, I think it's certainly appropriate to do that. So I'll make a motion to approve that.
Got a motion? Do we hear a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion by Councilman Stowe, second by Ryan Strift. All in favor, say aye. Okay.
I guess Richard had a question.
Procedurally, I mean, after the second, do we have discussion normally? Do we offer that? I wanted to ask you, where did this come from? Was there a request for this, or is this something that generated out of the Park and Rec Department?
No, similar to what Mr. Miller mentioned, we did have some requests of the Red Light and Belmont event last year, and among discussion amongst the multiple department staff when brainstorming about this event, we just thought it might be an additional element that folks could enjoy.
Well, I mean, I'm honest, I've got some concerns about it because it has always been traditionally a family event, and I don't know. I just always don't relate consumption of alcohol at family events to having a good time on that. So that's all I had to say. I just wondered where it came from. That's all the discussion I have.
My question is, how do we determine who serves it and what gets served? And
Well, they check IDs and everything, too.
It would be beer specifically, we're looking at bringing in a craft vendor, local brewery, trying to
Okay.
keep it within Gaston County, and hoping that they'll be willing to staff, ID check, and handle that entire portion, so it runs similarly as it would in the
Yeah.
vicinity.
Okay.
And they check IDs and everything like that, too,
Yes.
Cassidy.
We
So
would ensure that they would follow those procedures.
So the interesting thing about Charlotte breweries is there's families all over the place inside of Charlotte breweries. It's now a family thing. So I don't oppose it.
All right. So we had motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed?
Opposed.
Got one opposed, okay. All right. Let's proceed.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is an update on the Historic Preservation Advisory Board. And Alec Robinson and the Planning Department will give you a presentation, but this is just a follow-up from the discussion items that we've had over the last year on historic preservation, and most recently at the 2019 City Council Planning and Retreat, when you asked that we, as staff, we bring you sort of a plan on how to, instead of having a Historic Preservation Commission or Historic Landmarks Commission, have a Historic Preservation Advisory Board that would not be regulatory in nature. And so the planning staff has done some more research, and I'll turn it over to Alec Robinson.
Thank you, Adrian. Council. I'll wave a little bit of background tonight, briefly. Back in October 2015, we formed a study committee consisting of 5 members, met most of that year, and ultimately that committee recommended a neighborhood conservation overlay district for our National Historic District. Subsequently, we hired a historic preservation consultant, Elizabeth Watkins, had extensive meetings with Elizabeth, and she issued her final report in 2017 and suggested that we implement implementation of an NCOD for these properties. After that, I was not able to determine a date, but the legislature limited our ability to control architectural features in this type of district, so that kind of went by the wayside. In 2018, we established and then subsequently held meetings with an actual historic preservation commission, which was empowered with the statutory regulations that could actually regulate architectural issues and so forth. After struggling with some of the mechanics of the board itself and a joint meeting in August, this commission was suspended to further ponder how future in that direction. As you know, in your retreat, y'all directed staff to look into the feasibility of forming an historic preservation advisory committee. This would lack the regulatory authority that a commission has or would have, and that was your distinct direction. we as staff were not able to find but one example of a town that had such a committee, a historic preservation advisory committee. Matthews formed the committee in 2007 after some issues with Charlotte Mecklenburg Landmarks Commission. Not necessarily the best way to go into the formation of a committee in response to some tension, but nevertheless they did it. This committee meets quarterly. It has 12 members, and the members have 2-year terms without a limit on the eligibility. Some of the duties: research, preserve, protect, and promote the heritage of the town. They have directed that the historic preservation function be used as a catalyst for economic development, specifically to showcase farming, railroads, and mercantile history of the town, to develop community awareness for historic preservation, seek funding for HP activities. As a way of a comment, in talking with their interim planning director, he says that this advisory committee has struggled on occasion when meeting, and at one point it was suggested that they might dissolve it, but it remains today and they continue to meet.
Alec, what caused the, comment on what caused the struggle part of it?
Just having a clear mission, direction.
All right.
I obviously haven't read the minutes,
right.
But you know, to me, the workability of a 12-person committee might diffuse the effort. This is staff's recommendation, and it is a recommendation, and please keep in mind that this is an advisory committee without regulatory power or teeth. Staff is recommending a 5-member committee. This is my suggestion, and I'll take the heat for it. Let's go with a pilot program of 1 or 2-year terms. I would encourage y'all to do as you wish, and hope that you would. As membership requirements, these also, further thought, 3 members must own a contributing structure in the National Historic District. We have an inventory, and it lists all the structures in the historic district, and they're either contributing as a historic structure or are not. And there could be an equal number, approximately equal number of those, suggesting that a member must own a contributing structure, and at least 1 member must live or work in a designated landmark. And this could be a dual role for that 1 person, rather than a discrete person. We're recommending quarterly meetings. Again, these are going to mirror some of Matthew's charges for their initiative, because they're the only ones we can find, and I think they have reflected some of the direction that y'all have had in mind. Research, protect, preserve, and promote the historic heritage. Showcase our past. Textiles, transportation, and retail. The committee could assist the Main Street program as a catalyst for economic development. Educate property owners on the benefits of local designation and offer assistance. We could have brochures made available. We could have material on a page on our website. Again, synergize with the Historic Belmont Foundation, the County Historic Preservation Commission, the State Preservation Office, for instance, or any other agencies that we could see fit. And lastly, amend the current zoning ordinance to delete the empowering sections for historic preservation.
I think that sounds excellent. The only suggestion I would make is, since we have a historical society too, I think we want to list them in the synergizing part. I know you've covered it with the other part, but
Yes,
they've been our
ma'am.
oldest organization.
An omission on my part.
And I have a different perspective on this. Is it okay to comment now, or? Because in the next several years, we're going to sell what we have, because I don't want to, my husband probably, we're on 5, but my husband probably would divorce me if we continue doing what we're doing for 10 years. I still will probably mow the yard there until somebody else decides they want to. But it concerns me that nobody else may take as good a care of that property as I do. But we cannot continue this, so I think this is at least it's a start. I think at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, we may have to rethink and go back to the commission idea. I mean, it has the regulatory part, because just because the people in this room have this feeling of how much importance the historic part is, does not mean the next generation or even the next group of people who are starting the businesses here would have that. So I'm very much in favor of what you propose. And I do think we need to look at it in a 1 or 2 year situation. The other piece of it, we paid Elizabeth a substantial amount of money, I mean not huge, to advise us, and we need to go ahead and take that advice and take that first step.
Is this an action item or information?
No, so this is information and to get your feedback. And if this is the direction that you want to take, we could present a resolution that would create the Historic Preservation Advisory Board and kind of give its scope and its mission and terms. Take that to you at the April 1st meeting, and then if you approve it, then we could begin advertising for membership.
I personally think it's a good idea.
I just had one question on the rationale behind removing the current historic preservation overlay zoning district. Does that make sense to do, since it doesn't impact anything?
Yeah, because people, the pushback to my way of thinking that we got was people did not want anybody telling them what to do with their property. And we want to, and we probably need to, but I think with the amount of pushback we had, we've got to take baby steps toward that, in that direction.
Well, how much control does that overlay district actually empower the city or whoever to control it? My understanding was it was a pretty watered down version. It really didn't have any teeth in it.
But we've never adopted the overlay district on the zoning map.
Okay.
The language was in place. We do have the National Register district.
So that's staying?
That's staying.
Okay.
And that's not regulatory.
This was a paper ordinance that was never implemented.
When did it come out?
95.
So it's dated as well?
Yes, sir.
All right, well,
I
don't want to adopt a 20-year-old piece of paper that we never adopted.
Well, no, the overlay was as recent as, what, 2 years ago? 2 or 3 years when they created that overlay?
No, we've had the historic district overlay for years.
The committee made a recommendation, the one consisting of, I thought they came forward with some recommendation.
They never got to that point.
They never established it, They came with the recommendation, but there was no overlay associated that through the process that was adopted.
I think this is a good first step, and I think we need to move forward with it, because it takes out the part of the original thing with the Historic Preservation Committee was people telling you what you can do with your property or not with your property. But I think this is a good first step, and I think you can develop it over the years. So I'd like to see us come up with something that we can vote on the next meeting.
And are you good with a 5-member board starting out?
Sure.
We could have staggered terms of 1 year and 2 years.
Yeah.
The membership requirement, I think one of the things that was important in all of our conversations was the people who actually live within that district.
What district?
Right.
The national district.
The National Register District being included. So here, Alec's recommendation is at least 3 of the 5 members live within the National Register District in contributing structures.
And one has to
at
live
least
or
one
work
in a local landmark.
Is that going to be difficult at all, item 2, or do you see it as a problem?
Shouldn't be. I think we can determine from the applications, absolutely we can determine it, to get enough to fill the seats, I would hope we will promote it.
I don't know how many, but we could certainly, I think it's a, it's not it's not hundreds and hundreds of homes, so we could probably send individual requests.
Sure. Well, the only reason I ask is the board that we have that we disbanded, I guess, it took forever to populate that board. I mean, years.
Yeah, I want to make sure we don't lose Jamie, and there was the person who lived in Williamsburg, Virginia, and very interested and has a lot of knowledge. So I want to make sure there's a spot for somebody like that on this board. I don't want it to be quite
so there would be two spots on this
Right.
board for somebody who doesn't live in that district.
All right, so do you want direction on how to get applicants?
Well, we can, sure, if you have.
So we're not complaining about what you did?
Well, to my way of thinking, the first thing we need to do is, and I know this is not necessarily the same procedure, but if those people fit within the parameters of this that we already had on our previous board, I think that if I were the person there, I don't want you to re-interview me because I've already said I want to help with this. So as long as they see the information, I'm concerned about asking them to come in for another interview when they already said they wanted to help to start with.
I agree.
I agree.
I do too.
If they want to serve on this type of board, I think they're.
Okay, we can certainly, so we'll reach out to the existing membership of the Historic Preservation Commission and see if they're interested. Those who are, we'll keep their name in the hat. Those who aren't, we'll thank them for their work. And then we can send some sort of notice to people that meet item 1 or 2, a postcard or letter, letting them know that we're creating this, and they would ask them if they would be interested in serving. And then, of course, we'll broadcast it wider to find those other 2.
Very good.
And then, as far as the text amendments, that would go through the Planning and Zoning Board and then come to City Council, like any other zoning text amendment.
Sure.
Then we can discuss. The main 2 sections would be the section of the code that has the Historic Preservation Overlay District in our zoning district chapter, and then the one that has the requirements for the Historic Preservation Commission in the boards and commissions chapter. So that'll come to Planning Board and then to the City Council.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Scroll down and get it populated.
Next item.
So the next item is an update from our Main Street Advisory Board. Thank you. The Main Street Advisory Board has been working on its goals and strategic plan, and so we've also had some discussion about business recruitment and potential incentives for specific types of businesses to come to our downtown districts. So I wanted Phil Bogan, our downtown director, and it looks like you've got some board members here, just to give a quick update to the council on their work.
Thanks, Adrian, and my mayor and council. I would like to start off by introducing some of our committee members. We have, Mark Fisher is on our board. He also serves as the chair of our Economic Vitality Committee. We have John and Jennifer Church, who also serve on the committee. We have Tripp Blair, that serves on the committee. Al Wall serves on the committee. And we have Mosala, who is been recently recruited to serve on the committee. So the 2 members that we do not have with us tonight, Mike Basco and Anne Marie Clinton. And so tonight we want to just talk a little bit about the overall work plan development for the Main Street program. The Main Street Board annually develop a work plan. A staff from the National Main Street Center, North Carolina Main Street Center, comes in, spends 45 hours. We look at our previous work plan, what we accomplished, what we didn't accomplish. We evaluate that and then move forward in developing a new work plan for the new year. So what I have presented you with tonight is a draft of the work plan along with just the task for the Economic Vitality Committee. So we have 2 economic development strategies that we're focusing on. And the first one is basically a major emphasis on business recruitment and business retention and recruitment. We want to promote and work with our existing businesses, but then also recruit additional businesses to come into downtown. And the second economic development strategy focused on really connecting the districts with events and opportunities for everyone. And so one page is economic development strategy number 1, and then it has the goals and those tasks, and then on the back page is the second economic development strategy. So big picture, our organization committee is really focusing on strengthening and building relationships with organizations, really getting the message out about who we are and what our mission is. The promotions committee this year, major focus on retail promotion and big partnership with the trolley board. We reached out to the trolley board thanks to Jennifer. We now have 2 members on our, Nate has signed up and is on our promotions committee. He came to our last meeting. And the other young lady, Jennifer?
Ashley McAllister.
So she is also going to serve on our promotions committee. So that is a big focus this year for our promotions committee, is promoting our downtown businesses and really working with the trolley board and promoting that project. Our design committee, big focus is to complete the electronic kiosk and really bring more art and culture into our downtown. So tonight, what we were really wanting to focus on was the economic vitality side of the Main Street committee. To me, that should be one of our strongest committees as far as the actions, because I think that's really needed in our downtown. A couple of the action items and tasks, of course, they're all outlined there for you, but a couple that we'd really like to engage with you and have a conversation about is developing an economic development strategic plan for Belmont, which would include developing a toolkit for us and also a business recruitment package to use in recruiting businesses. Other is really studying the Esri market retail analysis to really evaluate the surrounding demographics, what type of businesses, what type of retail would survive in downtown. And so that's something that this committee's really been studying. Another action item is developing and maintaining a business inventory so that we really stay on top of who our businesses are, who are our property owners, and our vacant buildings, so that we are ahead of the curve and having that relationship with those business owners and understanding the rental agreements and knowing ahead of when we might have a space coming available. And so to paint more of a broad picture about our downtown businesses, I'd like to kind of give a snapshot of the classifications and what we have. We have a large percentage of office and service businesses in our downtown. Retail is only 9%, food and drink is 14%, and then 7% vacant as far as, and that's not buildings, that's also some spaces within buildings, but, so we're talking about just our businesses. So most people may not think that this is a problem, but if you really want to look at a healthy downtown, you really want to have a good balance in your businesses so that you're not solely relying on one type of industry, because if something happens, then your back is against the wall and you end up with additional vacant properties.
So Phil, is this by square footage or by actual building?
No, this is just space. This is space. So for example, the Stowe building, multiple office spaces, so that each of those spaces are accounted within this, and this is just space.
So what's the total square footage of the pie chart?
As far as space, I believe it was about 170 spaces that was taken into account in looking at this inventory. As I was developing this yesterday, I thought, I could take this further and really break it out and have different pie charts to really show different samples of, businesses or buildings, and so that's something that I would.
You don't need to answer this now, but where I was getting at is what kind of impact would the commercial building behind the bicycle shop have on this pie chart? Each of those spaces, if it's 6,000 square feet, 3 2,000 square foot sections, and one gets retail, does that push it, or?
So, this doesn't, like I said, this does not take into account, retail, but that does lead into, it does as a good segue into why we feel like it's very important to have that list of retail business that we really want to see in downtown, and already establishing relationships with those types of people, so that when we have vacancies coming up, we're already communicating with them, and so when that building becomes vacant, that we're like, Johnny on the spot, signing a lease with a targeted retail business that we have actually recruited, instead of just waiting and allowing to see what happens. So prime example of that, when on the right side of Happy Dog, the little jewelry store, or Arts, when that space is now empty. We were hoping to get a retail space in there. Matt, the property owner, Matt Nada, was actually talking with someone about who was looking at retail. I found out after the fact, then they did not rent the space, but another real estate office did. And so I thought, wow, if we'd have had some type of incentives that we could have sat down with that property owner to strengthen and encourage that retail business instead of just waiting to see what else comes in, I feel like that would have a bigger impact on achieving a greater balance in our businesses downtown.
Good point.
And so, kind of back to your question, we know we have 6 potential spots coming in, new construction. We should already be working with the property owners and know what type of businesses we would like to target to recruit into that space, instead of having 6 vacant spaces sit there for a while and just waiting to see what comes in. For example, having a vacant building, the impact is tremendous as far as lost sales in the community, lost sales tax revenue that the city, the county, and the state could be relying on, lost rent for the property owner, lost employee payroll, a loss of jobs in our downtown, and of course loss of utility payments in that facility. And so this is where we see having some type of potential incentives. Now, this is just me putting stuff down on paper. Our committee is doing research, looking at other communities, visiting other communities to see what's out there, so that then we could actually try to develop an incentive package that really works for us. And this is just, this is just strictly for conversation, potentially covering a percentage of a down payment. If we're sitting there trying to communicate with that potential new retail business, say, look, we'll pay, X amount of your down payment or rent to secure the deal. Really working through the permitting, maybe covering some permitting fees, looking at our current facade enhancement grant, which is strictly exterior, maybe look at some type of interior build out as an extra incentive to secure and I'm talking about businesses that we are targeting, not just any business, but very specific retail type businesses that we would want to see locate into downtown Belmont. Look at some type of low interest loan process, or really pushing marketing and branding for them. And so it's some type of incentives like these that we as a committee would like to develop. But we don't want to get too far into the process without really kind of having that conversation and engaging you to make sure we're on the right path with something that you're thinking. Because I know one of the things that's been on your agenda is really focusing on economic development for the city. And so we just want to make sure that we're on the same page with you before we move forward and too much longer into this. There's a lot of research that the committee's really been putting into this, this work.
Where would the money for these down payments and low-interest loans come from?
Well, this would be something that we would package and maybe put together in the Main Street budget proposal. That's why we wanted to engage you early on in the process. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be all financial. This was just me, because I figured a question may come up, well, Phil, what are y'all thinking? Well, we haven't really started talking nuts and bolts. We're in research phase really right now. And Jennifer, John, Mark, Al, feel free to jump in, but we've just been researching. We feel like Belmont's in a position where we need something to really go after and really target specific businesses.
I think it's a good point. I really
If
do.
you look at just this Ezra marketplace profile data, you would see, maybe like a clothing store, the demand potential is $11,105,000. The supply is like $1,634,547,000. So there's a big leakage there of like 74%. So if we can recruit businesses that are going to be vibrant, they're going to stay here and not be gone and find a sublet for somebody.
One of the concerns I have is that part of the research, I think, needs to fall to you parks because of whatever legal ramifications there might be about us contributing money in those kinds of situations. Is that something we should be concerned about or not?
It depends on how you structure the whole format of the incentives. Economic incentives are allowed by state law.
Okay.
Follow state law.
Right. Isn't the hardware store going to be a bed and breakfast? I've heard. Have you heard that?
I have not. Well, early on I heard that, and so a few months ago I did sit down and talk to Matt to kind of see what direction he was going with that facility, with that property. And I will disclose that last week I did meet with a group of people who were interested in renting that space and possibly doing an outdoor clothing outfitters type business, and they were asking about what types of incentives, and so of course I made no promises, but I basically said we have our facade grant incentive. What I did tell them about our Main Street program and our economic vitality is researching and working on trying to put together a recruitment incentive package to move up for approval.
What was it, LL Bean that comes in and does the old clothes and hunting stuff like that? Is that who that is?
There is an LL Bean store.
Yeah.
Out there.
So, given the work that the Main Street Board has been doing and your interest on having a vibrant downtown, obviously the retail market is challenging for lots of reasons, and having a vibrant downtown retail market is even more challenging.
Yeah.
So we haven't given Phil and his board a whole lot of tools to work with as far as recruitment and incentives and trying to get somebody or a retail company in the downtown space. So they've been doing a lot of preliminary work, but before they really engage on some specific proposals, we want to just check in with the council to see if just conceptually you're okay with the board continuing this work and bringing back some proposals for some economic incentives so that we can recruit. And it would be, as Phil mentioned, it would be recruiting the types of businesses that fit with the Main Street Board strategic plan. It wouldn't be just anybody who wants to open, because if my math is correct, it looks like you've got about 93% occupancy, which is good. But of that 93%, it's not balanced. And so we don't want downtown to become sort of uptown Charlotte in the 80s, where it's just an office park, and at 5 o'clock everybody goes home, and then some people come back and have dinner. So we want it vibrant. So we want to check in with you and have a discussion before they do a lot of work.
So just a couple comments on this piece. I don't, if there is a place for it, I don't think it's for 1, 2, 3, 4 people, kind of second career opening up a gift shop or a jewelry store. It needs to be more of a business with some sort of track record or ready to come, somebody that knows how many employees th're going to hire, how many how much they're going to pay them. Yeah, somebody actually has a legitimate business model, maybe based on amount of square footage they're going to take up, and things like that, versus, yeah, that kind of stuff, because that's where you see, I think, more of the larger government subsidies come in, is on, like, how many jobs are actually going to be created. As far as maybe thinking a little bit outside the box, too, is using, money that we instead of spending actual dollars on incentives, looking at the other side of the sheet, with Friday Night Live, I mean, you could give them, free tents or something like that in the first couple of years where they could entertain their employees. I was heavily involved with the hotel deal that's wildly unpopular in Gastonia, next to the conference center, the old lawyers building. If anybody's familiar with that, it's getting ready to open up. But it was wildly unpopular because people thought the city of Gastonia was giving them tax incentives and tax money. In reality, all they're doing is any improved value of the building, that gap in the tax difference gets rebated for a certain number of years. So it costs the city nothing, and in turn it takes a building that was going to be left to die and gives it a second life. And so if there's ways to incentivize it on that side of the equation where you can, and it's tough because you got renters coming in and you got different property owners. And so you got a different mix there. So maybe you can work something out, like if you're talking about the general store, with the owner of the building doing something to help the tenant coming in, and then we do something to offset the tax gap on reappraised value or something over the next 5 years. I think that's a better way to get support up here. I would be open to a lot of options, but I think that's probably your best bite to get more folks on board with something like that.
Just out of curiosity, Bill, the Belmont Federal Savings Responsibility, have you got any takers on that at all?
Actually, Mayor, I met, what was the gentleman's name?
Mr. Hicks?
Yes, Michael Hicks.
Michael
Shelley connected me with Michael Hicks, and I actually met with Michael about 3 weeks ago, and we walked through the property, and he's ready to do something.
Good.
He's eager to do something with the property. If you drive by, you will notice that he has started removing the fence post and started to clean up.
That's what that is.
So he is eager to do something. His ultimate would be a high-end restaurant. He shared with me that he and his wife go to Gastonia to eat at Webb Custom Kitchen once a week, and he would love something of that scale.
Yeah.
And so I shared with him that I was actually friends with Jim Oressa, who owns that.
Yeah.
And so he asked me to reach out to Jim to see if Jim would like to do another restaurant. So he would like to do a restaurant of that scale so he doesn't have to drive elsewhere, but if not, he's open to office or other ventures, just to get it occupied. So,
Yeah.
But he has started cleaning up, and so there is movement there.
Yeah, good, thank you.
So he's just interested in being a landlord. He's not personally
Well, but he would also
vested in the business.
I asked him a lot of questions, and he's actually, if it was something that was of great interest to him, he would also be a funder and a partner.
Interesting.
Well, Phil, I didn't realize that our 70% was business and service. I mean, there's got to be something that's driving that. I mean, you guys identified the root cause. Are the rents high? Are people struggling with rents?
I would venture to say that Belmont, comparable to other size communities around the state, rents might be a little higher here, I think.
But I don't think that that's probably a reason why people wouldn't come down here. I think it's more on the demand side. When you look at the demographics of the downtown, and if you kind of compare it to, say, downtown Charlotte, where there's a lot of residential development that drives the retail. So to me, I think, and obviously, I've been working on the Chronicle and trying to get that redeveloped, and I just delivered the plans to Planning and Zoning tonight.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that would help with recruiting is that if we're going to build a nice apartment complex downtown with 300, 400 people, that could help drive different types of businesses that are down here. But I think to answer your question, Richard, is that the reason why it's an office, people that live here want to work here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's become a natural place to work. I mean, who doesn't? Beautiful downtown, close to restaurants, work. so you get to work and play downtown. So I think the idea is that if we can, we can get the project, the Chronicle up and going, and we have 300-400 people downtown here that can start buying things and on a regular basis in downtown. That'll help drive the economic development of our downtown. So I think that's part of it. It's not, I think it's, when I look at it and been working on it now for 8 years, the spaces, another component of space, not just rent, is the type of space. So you don't have, you have 5th and 6th generation space that's very expensive to change. So that adds to the cost. So whether the rents are not higher, but to go in and change the space, to adapt it to a retail space, so to speak. And I think I love the general store. Jenny and I love that place. And it's been sad to see it's never really turned into anything, but a big part of that is the renovation costs.
Yeah.
So how do you meld that into the rent and cost, because it becomes, sometimes it's just too much. And I think there's a lot of people, I can tell you over the last 8 years, there's all kinds of people that have gone through that building and wanted to do something with it, but when they end up doing the analysis and the cost, it just doesn't work out. And so I think we have a couple challenges, again, inside, spaces. I still think parking's a problem. I mean, it's, when you have retail space, people typically want to have, something that's a little more convenient. So that I think is a challenge. So to add all that up together is, it's a challenge. So we're trying to dissect it and trying to figure out how we can maybe target some retail spaces, the retail companies down here. And then if we get some more demand down here, then I think that'll drive it as well.
Well, Ryan's point was well taken about, the type of business, mom and pop versus someone, more organized, I guess, chain or whatever. One of the reasons I ask is, that is a good point, but I immediately thought of Provisions, which, is a chain, was projected to be very successful here. I don't know why they left, whether it was just not enough foot traffic to drive it, whether it was rent, but I think that's part of the equation, is to find out why something like Provisions couldn't make it here at Belmont, because everybody thought that was a natural fit for us.
The conversation I had, and I don't want to say it's just the only reason, but his other store that was in Wausau, Blacksall down on the south side of the road, that was twice as big. And it's more efficient to have, if you're going to, manage a property, you got to have enough floor space and storage space and to drive your numbers. And it was a combination of, just it wasn't big enough for them, and the other space was a lot more efficient in terms of sales because of that. So that was just one reason. It could have been others too.
I think success breeds success when it comes to downtown, and looking back at restaurants blossoming in downtown Belmont versus Gastonia, which is now starting to get some legs. But for a long time, you go to downtown Gastonia and there'd be one restaurant, and so if you didn't like it or whatever, you just kind of faded. But in Belmont, as opposed to going to Nellie's for dinner, a lot of folks go to Belmont for dinner where they'll just park their car and then go find a restaurant somewhere. So you have restaurants popping up everywhere. I mean, it's not unlike why all the Wall Street firms are all right next to the big law firms. It's people want to be together around other successful groups so they can interact. And if you had 3 or 4 retail businesses that you could plop down all at one time, the whole thing would go from there. It's just hard to how you build it, and I think it takes like a big anchor or something. That's why I'm open to some sort of recruiting plan. I just think it's got to be well thought through. It's got to be, it's got to be your most impact. And I support the facade grants, but you're not getting the same kind of impact from that as you would from something like this. It's a completely different ballgame altogether. So I'd find out what's working. Not interested in putting air conditioning units upstairs like they do in Mount Holly, but something different.
Taxes are one thing that you won't control. And
that's right.
To your point about being able to incentivize investors to put capital.
The free market doesn't work in a lot of these ways, and Belmont doesn't like the free market anyhow, as we've all come to realize over the years. So if we can somehow steer some sort of investor behavior, that would be good.
So I'm hearing consensus to have the Main Street Board continue working on this and bring it back
absolutely.
To build some more tools.
Yep. Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next agenda item is a review of our land development project process with Shelley DeHart.
Thank you.
Well, I wanted just to provide this brief overview. Our planning board really keeps staff on its toes, and we report quite often to them on what we're doing, what the process is, and they want to make sure that we're not only doing projects, but long-range planning as well. So we try to give them this overview. It's just good to go over the process as a whole for the city. Okay, so there we go. So, as you know, one of the most important documents for a city to help guide its growth in long-term vision is our comprehensive land use plan. We recently updated it in 2018. It was approved. As you know, it involved a lot of public engagement, community, stakeholders, citizen planners. And when I use the term citizen planners, I mean our appointed boards, our advisory committees, even the general public that come in and provide us input. Of course, staff, and ultimately the document was approved by the decision makers. So we view this document as and it is a public document where it engaged our community. It's not just a planner document or actually even a council document. It had input from the general public. So this document, Long Range Guide for Growth, Development, and Redevelopment of the city and our planning area. We want to make sure that the areas are coming into the city. We had a plan for the peninsula area, for example, to 2038. It consists of visions, goals, strategies. It's used by the planners, developers, property owners. We get property owners that are looking to buy in Belmont, and they want to make sure the long-range plan for land adjacent to them is in an industrial park. So it's becoming a more used document. Other plans that we utilize are small area plans, bike, pedestrian, park and recreation plan, and other special documents like the Build a Better Boulevard document. All of these plans are great to have, but they really don't serve a community because they don't have teeth. They're a guide. So what we depend on is our implementation tools, which are our laws, our regulating tools. Sometimes we're a little bit limited because we can only regulate what the state grants us to, the authority that the state grants us. So we have our zoning ordinance is a development code. It regulates and helps establish the guidelines and rules for land use, building types, landscape and tree preservation, open space, and other performance standards with regard to development designs, the design of the streets, parking, subdivisions. We also have other regulating tools that are housed in other departments or other documents, such as the municipal code, the city's FOG program for their sanitary sewer, keeping the grease and fats out of the city's system. We have stormwater, we have watershed rules, floodplain rules. So there is just a wide range of codes that are used by not only planning but other departments, and some are regulated for us by Gaston County. So what I wanted to do is give you a process example, and I'm going to use Worrells River property because that was a unique case that I look at it from start to finish. There was a public process that development went through from the very beginning, and it started actually back in 2016. The Crescent team came to the city and said, we're interested in coming into the city of Belmont. We want to develop a subdivision, and we would like to come into Belmont. So it took some research, and we found that there's an annexation agreement between Cramerton and Gastonia where that property was identified to be annexed in the future by Gastonia. So it took conversations between the county and Gastonia and Cramerton, and of course Belmont, to come up with a Tri-City agreement for annexation between the three cities. All of this information was presented to the council under the guidance of the council, the interest of the council, and it was ultimately approved. From there, we continued to work with them with the annexation of this specific property. So that came into council along with the zoning application, and that too was a public process, public hearings that were approved by council in April of 2017. The zoning on the property did go through the typical rezone process. It was designated as suburban residential, which was consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and the direction the council was looking at in downzoning properties on the peninsula to about 3 dwelling units to the acre. So that was a unanimous approval for that as well. So from there, in April through the end of 2017, their team had multiple meetings with the city. They were trying to figure out the utilities, which is very complicated. Utilities, they were working on sketch plans. And it wasn't until near the end of 2017, the beginning of 2018, they really submitted some formal sketch plans. What we call our TRC, Technical Review Committee, started looking at these sketch plans. Now, for our ordinance, this is typically done at construction plan stage. We do it early. We do it at the very beginning before a subdivision is approved. And it's going through the process, whether it's a conditional zoning or a major development plan. So that means every department in the city is at the table reviewing the plan. We have fire, police, utilities, streets, stormwater. We also have county representatives. Brian Skiba, the lead building inspector for Gaston County, he's at the table, as well as other representatives in Gaston County. So we take a couple of months and review the plans and continue to consult with their team until we get a plan that all the departments are satisfied with. So it wasn't until the end of actually 2018 that we actually established the process, because until someone gets a really solid sketch plan, we don't know if they're going to need any kind of special relief, or are they coming in by right, what the process is. And by the time the dust settled, through all of the negotiations and the redesigns, we determined it could go through a major development plan process, which again, that means that they are able to comply with all the regulations in the land development code, and they do not need any special concessions. So the major development plan is in Belmont. It's a public process. The way the codes, the land development code is written, we require that they go before the planning board and the city council.
You said in Belmont, is that not typical?
No, that's not typical. Typically, when you have a development that can meet all the codes, it's zoned properly, and it can meet all the codes, it's usually an administrative process. They file everything within the planning department, the planning and the
So you guys approve it?
Goes tick, 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 yes, and we move forward. And I think it's an excellent process because it does promote a community dialogue, and it's really the public process that helps fine-tune a plan. I think where we end up with a better plan, whether it's legislative or this process. So the developer went ahead and had a community meeting, although not required, went ahead and had a community meeting for the project in January of 2019, trying to gear up for the planning board meeting The plan then went to your planning board in February this year, and based on the discussion, there were quite a few additional conditions added between the planning board and council. And then again, it went to the council just this month. And again, based on public input, there are some additional conditions that were added, and it was ultimately approved. So where does it go from here? So there's still a long journey. So based on the conditions and the work ahead of that team, they still have to continue researching utilities. There are continued dialogue between the Carolina Thread Trail, the Catawba Land Conservancy that regulates the Thread Trail. Based on the conditions, they have to resubmit a sketch plan so we can make sure that their redesign meets all the conditions that are placed. Continue discussions with Danielsville Botanical Gardens regarding their delivery access road, and NCDOT because they are conditioned to do the roadway improvements as identified in the TIA. We want to make sure it's coordinated and approved by NCDOT. So that work alone is probably 6 months to a year. Then they submit their construction drawings. It goes through our internal review. Again, it goes back to TRC. It goes to all the other departments. Utility looks at it, engineering, fire, everybody looks at it again. And we provide comment until it's actually approved. And that takes 2 or 3 rounds of review, so I put 6 months there. That's before they can start moving dirt. So where we started with this project is the discussion started in the end of 2016. It's probably likely we might be able to start moving dirt by the end of 2020, if not early 2021, by the time they satisfy everything above, and go through the construction plan, gets because their water and such. So we're thinking 2021 to 2024 build out. So 2016, that's 4, that's about 8 years of discussions going through the process. So it really is a lot longer process than people realize. I think we have very good standards, and I think that we should be very proud of our development leadership in the city. And it's a combination, I think, of the leadership here. It's also our citizens planners that are involved as well. Your planning board is outstanding, our Board of Adjustment and our other committees. They really vet these projects out very well. Some are engineers, some are architects, some are lawyers, and they all evaluate the project. So these are all well vetted, they're well trained and understand the legal structure we have to operate in. So again, I commend the city leadership for ensuring that we have an updated and current comprehensive land use plan. If you don't know where you're going, it's hard to figure out how you're going to get there. We also have other focused area plans in our comp plan, as well as Bike Golden Better Boulevard, our development regulations. A lot of people watch our city with regard to our ordinances. We were the first in Gaston County, I believe, to adopt our own TIA ordinance. Mount Holly has since adopted, and they're using Kinlinghorn as well, and so is the town of Cramerton. They have followed as well. If we could get all the jurisdictions doing the same thing, we can help catch that incremental traffic impact in our region. I have researched tree preservation ordinances, including in Gaston County. We have a very good ordinance. It can definitely be strengthened, but based on what we're seeing on the ground, it's a pretty good ordinance. Our internal process, we continue to establish our internal process, And a recent change, a lot of the other jurisdictions are watching. I think we're the first in the area to require a foundation survey to ensure early that there are no encroachments. But when we developed this new criteria, the way we rolled it out is we had to partner with Gaston County because they control our building permits. So we needed to time it and find the right breaking point to actually implement it, to ask for the survey. Then we talked to builders and we asked them, well, tell us about your process. You know, if we were to stop you here and say, we need this foundation survey, what does that do on the ground? Well, of course, they don't want to stop. So by talking to all parties involved and making them a partner, we think we came up with a really good process that we've rolled out. It may need some adjustments because it's new, but we're waiting to see how it's rolled out. But it will certainly help us, and I think if it works well for us, we'll see other jurisdictions in Gaston County following that same process. Our public engagement, I think we're very transparent and not only follow the state law with regard to public engagement, we exceed it, whether it's for legislative or quasi-judicial cases. And again, the by right process, the major development plan process, it is a public process. We encourage dialogue because we believe with the input, we can help end up getting a better project for Belmont overall. We provide a lot of information on our website. So what we do is, when we get a project and we're working on it, we create a web page for the project that has the application, it has the traffic analysis, meeting notices, any information associated with the project we try to post up here so people can read about it, identifies who the planner is, how you contact them. So that is up there for the project. And I'm trying to think which one of these. Let's see if I can go back another.
Will you click on the meeting notice?
That's where I'm going next. I'm trying to make sure I get it right. Here we go. And then we've continued to evolve our process internal. And this is an example of the public meeting notice that we send out. Years ago, we used to send out this little postcard, and it just said, when the meeting is. It didn't really give much information. So now we try to provide more information there. Again, we identify the planner and so forth. And on the back side, there we go. On the back side of this document, we have a site plan, a location map. We even try, this bottom portion here talks about, well, what is a major development plan? We try to explain the process to somebody. And again, sometimes they give us calls and they say, I still can't understand what this is. And we try to modify our form to simplify it because we're used to the lingo, so sometimes we need to simplify it. But we really do try to provide as much information as we can to the general public and be transparent about what we do. Okay, so again, we report to our planning board all the time and asking us what we do and what we're working on. This is our organization chart. I want you to notice our little tiger in the lower right. He's the most exciting one in our department. But we cover everything from the Main Street program, economic development. We have focus on environmental, long-range planning, more of the technical information, all trying to implement or accomplish the land use plan or any direction provided by this council. Department, and you're well aware of this, we do permitting, regional planning, where there's transportation, biped, we work with the various citizen planners or boards and committees, that you see there. We also work on special projects as they come forward. Last year, 2018, we did 4 conditional use permits. 3 had to do with infill development, one was the middle school. We did 17 site plan reviews. Those are the construction plans. After you guys approve most of these developments, we then still keep working on them. So you can see some of them listed here. Some you see, some you don't. For example, some are, let's see, Queen of the Apostles is doing a large addition. So some of the projects you may not see, they might be just a change in use or conversion. Like Exodus Church is moving into the Haunted Mill. And
Are you going to still call it the Haunted Mill?
yes, they're at that note, of course. So they're starting to break ground. We did 6 rezones in 2018. 5 of those were conditional. The one conventional was the South Fork overlay that placed an overlay over the 1,100 acres for the small area plan. We did 7 text amendments to the land development code for various reasons. Some we see changes going on in law, like the electronic gaming. There's changes going on, and we started getting a lot of inquiries, so we thought we needed to tighten up our ordinance in various sections.
So can you just go back? So that's a total of 32 lots that were approved in 18?
32 lots. Let's see, 20 lots, senior housing.
Not including the senior housing.
Yeah, for rezone.
For rezoning.
That's just simply rezones. Final plats, even after the construction plan phase for developments to start selling the lots, we have to do plats, major development reviews. There's actually more now, but Morris River's the one that was approved. Tucker Road is still ongoing. Amberley is moving from a sketch plan to a major development plan that you should see in April. That happens to be, it's an approved project for 164 lots. They're requesting additional lots, so we're making them go back through the process. They've done a TIA. It's going back before council.
Did their old plans expire? Is that how that works?
They got all the way to the construction plan phase. I mean, they've been working on it for years. So they vested to that point. They just haven't been able to sell it to any builders because of the development costs. There's a lot of topo and requirements. So they're going through this next process.
So they're not grandfathered into anything?
No, because if they don't get this, they'll either have to go ahead and pull their permit or it will die.
Okay.
So it will terminate at some point. Woodlawn.
So they're still vested in their existing plan?
Yes, they are vested in their existing plan, but the outcome of this will tell them which one they want to pull. We also have construction plans actually have been submitted. It's no longer a sketch plan for the marina, McLean. It's a really nice laid out marina. It's approved as part of the conditional zoning, and it is moving through the system now. So just overall, last year, 2018, 444 zoning permits were issued. The numbers below are the evaluation and the number of permits. We saw a lot of investment, reinvestment in existing properties, accessory structures, new single-family dwelling, the valuations, 37 million, new multifamily between the apartments and townhomes that were permitted, over 8 million, alteration residential, over $1 million was invested. Some of the other investments, we saw a lot in existing non-residential buildings. Alteration non-residential, $6 million worth of investment last year. New non-residential structures, 8 million signed permits. We have a miscellaneous sort of category. So total valuation, again, this is estimated on what the numbers that the builders and developers give us. It may not be the same valuation that once it gets over to the building department, Gaston County, they may show it higher. So over 66 million in valuation invested in our community last year.
Pretty good.
So subdivisions, changes in our subdivisions out of those single-family homes. It also counts Aberfall, but we had 22 infill single-family homes. Aberfall was a mix of apartment units and townhomes. You could see on this, the bulk of the single-family permits new were in the McLean development, 47 Conservancy, Overlake 23, and South Shore 17. This is a little harder to read, but it basically shows all the approved projects, the number of lots or units, the total vacant, and how much out of the total lots are actually built out. So that's sort of a snapshot of where we are. Of course, long-range planning, I covered that. We focus on transportation, some environmental related aspect. Our team is working with ZIP's team on the update of their Park and Recreation Master Plan. It was identified as a task in the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, so we're excited that we get to help out with that. Of course, economic development's covered by our Main Street program under Bill Bowman's leadership. Great job. And of course, we all continue to do the implementation of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, and something that is just starting up with the new possibility of the Silver Line coming into Belmont, that alignment approval. We are part of a grant with other cities along the line to look at our ordinance for TOD development. That's transit-oriented development ordinance. So that will help us revision the alignment on Wilkinson and the land use adjacent to it. We can start putting into place ordinances that would help support that and create that vision. So with that, that's all I had. I just wanted, again, our planning board keeps us on our toes and likes us to report in on what we're doing. And
so you already did that for them? When did you do that?
I did it actually over two, not the one on Worrells River, that one was grabbed, but all the other information, we did a little at the last meeting and some a couple of months before that, so.
I have a question, and it relates to Chapter 15, as far as the idea that if a development is more than 8 units,
yes,
that it has to come in for some review. Relate that to build by rights as affected by Chapter 15, and the strength that we, because there's a different relationship there. So can you speak to that?
Well, I want to make sure I understand.
All right. What I'm asking, if it relates to Chapter 15, and a developer comes in here and it goes through planning and zoning, it's built by rights, and they have a meeting with the public, they meet with the planning and zoning board, and they come up with these conditions. The conditions are brought forth to us. Are we voting on the conditions? Are we voting on the bill by rights issue?
Okay. Well, I'm going to look at legal and help me on this. I would say both as well. What you're approving is the schematic plan that's associated with this development. So basically the layout. When staff comes up and says, yes, they're meeting all the regulations, here's the layout, you're voting on the schematic plan. Then what happens through the public process, issues are raised and the developer can indicate that they're willing to put a wider buffer or to enclose their station items, whatever the issue may be. And then we list them as conditions. And again, that's something that is above and beyond what our ordinance requires. So that's why, when it's something like that, even in legislative, we ask the developer, are you willing to do it? Then we put it on paper, because if they turn around and flip it, so say it gets approved, and you don't document all those items, then if it's sold to another builder or developer, we want to make sure that whatever was promised by that particular applicant is carried.
But as far as the vote, we're voting that we agree with the developer, and we've come through this idea that we agree to these conditions.
Yes.
All right, on the opposite side, what if the developer says, I don't want to do any of them?
Well, then it's
Can we stop them
they're
from?
meeting the code, and it becomes more of
No,
a
it's by right. We don't need to vote.
legal issue. I mean, you could, I guess, technically say, well, we deny the plan, but you're just sort of setting yourself up for a legal issue.
So the thing in bill by rights, that's one issue. The other part is these conditions that we agree, because we've had meetings with the community, we've had planning and zoning, it's come before us, and we sit down and we agree with the developer that these are the things we want. So when we vote yay or nay, we're voting on the conditions.
The whole package, yeah.
All right, now, the bill by rights thing, what if, so we, explain that, Parks.
It's awkward in our code to vote on something that's by right, but that's what our
It is
code,
awkward,
our
but that's
code
what our code
says.
says.
Now, what you've done is, you've set up requirements in your code, and you say, developer, property owner, whoever you are, if you want to build in this location, you have to meet these requirements. If they meet those requirements, then it's anticipated that you would vote to allow it, because you've set the rules as a council. They've met the requirements. So if you didn't approve it, you have to give them a reason why you turned it down. And there is no good reason if they've met all your requirements.
Yeah, it specifically says in our
And-
code, under that process,
and
you
we
have
talked
to
about our
put into the
ordinance.
record why you're disapproving it.
We've talked
Correct.
as a council before, but some people say our ordinance is our laws. So you as council people are charged with enforcing your laws. Well, you can't, you have to enforce them fairly either way. You can't say, I like it for this purpose, but I don't like it for this purpose. But, you know, you as a council, as a body, have established the rules. Nobody's making you do it. You've done it. You have set the rules up. You put your requirements out there. They've met the requirements, and now it's intended probably as a formality, but the motive behind it was to allow all these other parties a voice in the process.
Exactly, and it's a great process.
So when you bring something to us bill by rights, then all those standards have been met.
Yes.
Yes.
So you're alerting to
So we
us.
verify it at
Yeah.
the original.
So you're saying to us, all the standards have been met. Now, the only thing we're talking about are these conditions that we can agree with them on.
Well, we still have to vote on the base.
Of the plans.
Under our code, we still have to vote on the base major development plan itself with the conditions.
So even if it's by right, we have to vote? Is
Yeah,
that
you have to
is that
vote.
by our choice that we chose that we would vote?
Yes.
I mean, to me, that's a moot point.
Yes.
I think we ditch that. If it's by right, it's by right. Now, if it's by right, and then there's some amendments, or whatever you call them, conditions that they want to do, then I think we vote on the conditions, but it's foolish to vote for the by right.
So
I mean, it's a done deal.
Yeah, so if it's by right, it's almost an administrative task you're doing, as opposed to rezoning, which is legislative.
Right.
And so in some places, that would never come to you.
Exactly.
It would be handled by staff, and if it meets all the requirements, staff approves it. If it doesn't meet the requirements, then it's a conditional rezoning and it comes to you. You have chosen to retain that authority to give you input, and I think it does work well.
It works well.
So for, last week at World's River, there was a question about, well, I would rather have some more woods between my house and these new houses. So if it were by right and administrative, we don't require a buffer between houses. We don't have a separation. So we would have had to allow those houses to be built right up to the property line and no perimeter buffering. But through the process that we've used, we're able to get something a little bit more enhanced.
But that could have happened anyway, because you came with conditions to us.
Well,
That could have been handled
And those
outside
conditions
of
really were
the
sort
council
of
meeting.
above and beyond.
Yeah, they
the
were above and
code
beyond. We
requirements.
do a lot of negotiation when we do our plan reviews. so we try to exceed our ordinance if possible, because at the end of the day, we know the developer goes away, whatever's left, we want to ensure that it's a quality development and exceeds the code. Personally, I love the process because developers know, they have attorneys just like we have an attorney. They know that if they meet the code, that's why sometimes developers right here will say, well, no, I'm not going to give up 2 lots. Because then, legally, they don't have to.
That's right.
If they meet the code,
That's right.
they meet it. So sometimes when we're negotiating with them, they know the limits and they'll tell us no. But in a public setting and forum, in this, they're a little more willing to concede and give up more things. And they hear different voices as well. So I'm trying to think of some examples.
I'm a time and money guy. I don't need to sit here for 45 minutes listening to something that's by right.
Well, and if the council felt that way, that we would need to amend the ordinance to change sort of the definition of the major development plan.
So it's in the people's best interest that we take them through this process, because it gives an opportunity to have them heard on conditions, even though the developers aren't forced to do it. However, it is not in our best interest, because we're constantly put on record for approving something that we have no control over. So it's really a matter of what's in the people's interest, or our interest, in my opinion. And it would be pretty easy if we could all stick together and we all vote and follow the Constitution and follow the laws that we've set forth. But seeing as it's typically a 4-to-1 vote and we just get thrown under the bus on Facebook and stuff, it makes it challenging to where we have to start considering what's in the people's best interest versus the process and that kind of stuff. So I would support the process, also not interested in a long-term career in politics. But I understand that we can take this out anytime and just rubber stamp it at Shelley's office and leave us out of it altogether. Although it was pretty rewarding the other night to get that guy an extra 60 feet of buffer between the houses. So I sleep well at night, but that's where I'm at with it.
I agree with you, right? I just think that people need to understand what we actually vote on.
So let me ask you about the statement of consistency. You were talking about the land use plan. How does that play into all of this? Now, suppose they meet all the conditions and everything, and what if the statement of consistency, we didn't agree with it? Where are we at that point?
Well, so if you're speaking about consistency findings with, they are tied to legislative acts by state law. That is, if it's a rezone or if it's a text amendment of our code, that's when the law says you have to make these consistency findings. That was done for this project back when we considered the original zoning. The consistency findings were there, it was voted on, it was unanimous that it was consistent with the comp plan, it met the density, so it was done there. So once the zoning's in place, if it's just a major development plan, you don't have to make consistency findings, although we do look at it. And again, we try to make it better than it was. If it was consistent when you place the zoning, it should be consistent with the development plan if they meet the text of the land development code. So, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
It doesn't apply to the situation.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to a major development plan, but it was, I'm trying to point out, it was considered and consistency findings were made for the property when we placed the zoning. Again, I tried to go through. We did a Tri-City annexation agreement to even have it considered, then we annexed it in a public hearing. And then we had a public hearing for the zoning, which was vetted at the planning board and the city council. Consistency findings were recommended by the planning board and approved by the council. So its zoning, based on maximum density, was consistent with the comp plan. It still is consistent with the comp plan, whether we meet it with the major development plan or the zoning, but we only do it for legislative acts.
I'd like to make one comment. I think sometimes we lose our perspective. We've come a long way since the 80s when we built our first house here, and we could get water, but we could not get sewer, so we had to have a septic tank. And my dad, in the major part of his career, was a county health inspector, and he talked to me about how unfortunate that was, because he said this land with red clay does not perk well. He said, whatever you can do to do that, you need. So whether you're looking at smart growth or managed growth, we've done that because you want water that's safe, and you also want sewer. You do not want septic tanks because of long-term environmental impact and everything. So we've done a whole lot, not just in Belmont, but in this region too, that sometimes we forget that, how far back that was as far as what we were not looking at that we should have.
The only thing I would say, I think the process is sound and we need to keep up with it.
Well, again, and we're always open to suggestions if we can better explain it at the public meeting so it's clear to the audience, or any additional information as council on.
I think it's a perceptional issue. People don't understand it.
Yeah, and if it meets the code, you need to go with it, period.
Any other questions for Shelley? Well, we have added a closed session for a consultation with the attorney on here. So, Jamie, if you don't mind turning that off. And we won't start till you get back.
We did the whole one last time.
This one will take a little bit longer.
We did that last time. We had to go to McDonald's. That's right.
Parks is leaving, so I can send him.